Good evening, my fellow South Carolinians. I'm State Representative Adam Morgan of Greenville County. Nearly 2 years ago, 13 conservatives in the House of Representatives, united by a common desire to prioritize fiscal responsibility, end corruption, and promote government transparency, formed the South Carolina Freedom Caucus. Today, we have 17 members from every corner of the state, and I proudly serve as our chairman. Born from the unfortunate reality that swamps as bad as D.C. exist in every state capital across our great country, Freedom Caucuses now stretch from the shores of the Palmetto State to the mountains of Idaho, from the bayou of Louisiana to the deserts of Arizona. But perhaps no other state was in such desperate need of a Freedom Caucus as South Carolina. For years, the South Carolina General Assembly has persistently ranked the most liberal Republican-controlled state legislature in America. And just one look at the voting board shows that that is true. Moderate Republicans teaming up with liberal Democrats to pass legislation that benefits the powerful at the expense of the forgotten. This past year was no exception. Every Republican congressman from South Carolina voted against Joe Biden's ironically named Inflation Reduction Act, a bill which showered billions in Green New Deal incentives and stood as the cornerstone of Bidenomics. Yet Republicans in the General Assembly added fuel, or should I say batteries, to Biden's climate change agenda by fast-tracking a $1.3 billion taxpayer-funded giveaway to a woke foreign electric car company. That company would produce off-road electric trucks, but it's also going to be bound by Germany's far-left ESG laws. And wouldn't you know it, just weeks later, Joe Biden visits the Midlands to praise the growing taxpayer-subsidized electric vehicle movement in South Carolina. The problem is, no one in America, except woke progressives, want electric vehicles. Moderate Republicans' embrace of Biden's climate change agenda looks worse each passing day as EV makers slash production and lower prices due to disappearing demands. Just this week, 16 Republican governors asked the Biden administration to slow its EV regulations, citing Americans' disinterest in these unpopular vehicles. South Carolina Freedom Caucus members voted against that crony capitalist deal. We believe the government handouts, they actually hurt free market and are akin to government manipulation of the economy. We continue to stand with President Trump as he warns against the disastrous Biden EV push and what it means for the American economy and American workers. But moderate Republicans throwing money at far-left causes didn't stop with their support for Biden's climate change agenda. They also, alongside their Democrat allies, gave millions of your taxpayer dollars to incentives for Hollywood film companies, hoping to entice them to import their woke California values to our state. Well, the Freedom Caucus has seen this movie before, and we don't recommend it. Our neighbors to the south in what was once deep red Georgia doled out the very same incentives to Hollywood years ago. Today, they have 2 Democrat U.S. senators and voted for Biden in the last election. Folks, Hollywood is a $47 billion industry. They certainly do not need your hard-earned money, and we certainly don't need their left coast values. Of course, last year also saw a budget fight, mostly centering on funding programs and causes that are antithetical to the Republican Party platform. Freedom Caucus members sought to defund the left's DEI initiatives at state colleges and universities. Those programs seek to replace deeply held American values of rugged individualism with a Marxist revolution that guarantees equal outcomes instead of equal opportunity. Once again, our moderate Republican colleagues joined with Democrats, this time to keep funding the left's indoctrination programs. These are but a few of the terrible policies being pushed by liberal Republicans in South Carolina and being fought against by conservative members of the Freedom Caucus. Our courageous stand for liberty, for smaller government, and free market capitalism earned praise from South Carolina's leading conservative groups. In fact, members of the Freedom Caucus were the only representatives to receive the prestigious award for conservative excellence from CPAC's Conservative for Legislative Accountability. But that advocacy for your values, the ones that you elected us on, to defend, drew the anger of the lobbyists, the special interests, and even House leadership. In fact, After the 22 election, in which Freedom Caucus candidates beat longtime moderate legislators, the Republican caucus tried to impose an unprecedented loyalty pledge designed to silence conservatives and keep us from informing you about what was going on in Colombia. That's the same tactics of Joe Stalin, not George Washington. We refused to sign, instead siding with our constituents, because you sent us to Colombia not to join an incumbent protection racket, but to fight for the issues that we actually campaigned on. Our refusal to swim in the Columbia swamp led to the 16 most conservative members of the General Assembly being thrown out of the Republican caucus. Now, without a conservative wing, the larger Republican conference is rudderless. Perhaps no greater example of this occurred just last week while debating the Do No Harm bill. It would ban childhood transgender surgeries for anyone under 18. Freedom Caucus members tried adding language to the bill that would require schools to notify parents when their minor child was attempting to transition during the opposite gender during school hours. Shockingly, the majority leader, a Republican, argued against parental notification, instead believing that parents should be left in the dark when their child was being groomed when they should have been learning. Of course, the rhinos purging conservatives was only the first instance of a long train of abuses. Shortly after our removal from the caucus, leadership took another page out of Biden's book and threatened to weaponize government against us. They were dead set on using crony ethics laws to muzzle, or worse, jail us for informing constituents about what was happening in Colombia. With the help of America First Legal and Stephen Miller, former advisor to President Trump, we successfully sued and overturned these unconstitutional laws that silenced our speech and violated the First and 14th Amendments. Our decisive victory against the Colombia cartel only infuriated them more, so much so that dark money groups were then formed across the state with the sole purpose of targeting conservatives in the Freedom Caucus. To date, hundreds of thousands of dollars have been spent attacking us, and the establishment has even recruited candidates to run against all the Freedom Caucus members. We know this because just last week, former Democrat and current Republican Assistant Majority Leader Jay West was caught courting lobbyists and special interests, begging them to raise more money to defeat the conservatives. Despite these overwhelming odds, constant attacks, and a barrage of falsehoods levied against us, we remain willing and ready to work with our fellow Republicans to provide a more free, prosperous future for every South Carolinian. We recently unveiled our 2024 legislative agenda and provided a roadmap to do just that. We believe that economic success and job creation comes from less government intervention and not taxpayer handouts to multinational corporations. We believe our judicial system has failed our law enforcement officers, prosecutors, and victims. It's high time to bring significant judicial reform to South Carolina. Lawyer legislators must never select the judges in which they argue cases in front of again. We believe we must fight and win the cultural war. The far left has infiltrated our schools. They seek to redefine basic biology, and they seek to tear apart the very fabric of America. We cannot give them an inch. We must defund DEI, remove CRT from schools and from our government. We believe that parents have a fundamental right to dictate the upbringing, care, and education of their children. It's time to pass a parental bill of rights and recognize that your child belongs to you, not the government. We believe safe and secure elections are the bedrock of our republic. That means closing our primaries and only allowing people who identify with the values of a particular party to select that party's nominee. To our Republican colleagues, rescind your crony loyalty pledge. Stop silencing speech and debate. Stop weaponizing government. And join with us in making South Carolina the most conservative state in the nation. Our future is bright. And to the people of South Carolina, we are engaged in a battle for the soul of the Republican Party. We either choose to lead with bold colors or pale pastels. We either choose free markets and limited government, parental rights and secure elections, or we choose the destructive path of more spending, more government, Patriots must unite and take our party, our state, our county, and our country back. But ultimately, the decision is up to you and who you choose to elect. The Freedom Caucus is here to fill the void in conservative leadership, and your support is vital. May God bless you, and may God bless the state of South Carolina.